Well, we move on now to our next session, which is on the Israeli entrepreneurial mindset. And who better to talk about this and share her knowledge than our next speaker, who is incredibly accomplished in this area. She is a startup and VC coach, advisor, CMO, global speaker, lecturer in the IDC Sheldon School of Entrepreneurship, and founder and CEO of GBL Coaching and Consulting for Startups. Please give a very warm welcome to Gali Bloch Liran.
Gave me a very strong educational, so by the age of 5, I was selling figs to our neighbors for less than $1 per kilogram. That was my first business. Then came my birthday production company and the babysitting, and later on the private tutoring. During my army service, I served in 2 leadership roles as an officer. I completed 3 academic degrees, relocated twice to Georgia and Washington, D.C., and gained a very interesting career as a marketeer, as a lawyer, and as a strategist. Oh, and I also run my own family office as a mother of 3 boys. So, like Sheryl Sandberg said, women all around the world should control their destiny and lead in. So, in this talk today, I want to share with you my 5 pillars of entrepreneurship, and I will be advising a few examples from the Israeli ecosystem and leading female entrepreneurs. So, let's begin. The first why is strong why and passion. So every entrepreneur I coach actually share his why and strong passion to why he actually invented his startup, his venture. What did he actually wanted to gain in this? He needs to love what he does and to have a clear vision in order to understand where is he going to. So this is like the first basic things that every entrepreneur should have in order to continue. So a wonderful example for a strong why and passion is Dr. Orna Berry. Orna Berry was the first female chief scientist and head of industrial AI in the Israeli government. She was the VP of Dell EMC Excellence Center in Israel, and she is a business figure and established a couple of Israeli companies like Alvarion and PrimeSense and Aladdin. She is the daughter of Yoash Tzidon, and her father actually was part of the Apala and the Palmach and was one of the first Israeli combat pilots, and also elected to the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. So you can actually see that her strong why and family values, the trend in her family was actually the reason to why she did all of this and for her contribution to the Israeli country and its economy. Adita Tarko. Adita Tarko is the CEO and co-founder of House. House is a startup company of a valuation of more than $4 billion, has more than 40 million users and more than 2 billion professionals in this platform. They actually created a marketplace to help you renovate your house and design it in a much better way. And she only wanted to renovate her house, so she tried to put a solution into it. She saw it's so complicated, so together with Alon, her husband, they simply decided to create a better solution and innovated a house. So you see that these passionate women that really had strong values to achieve what they want, actually this was the reason to establish the ventures. Second pillar that I want to share with you is chutzpah and creativity. The picture that you see here is the art of Hanoch Piven, who's one of the most famous Israeli artists, who brings much chutzpah and creativity into his art. So entrepreneurship requires assertiveness. And for us, as a company, as a society that had to establish its place in Israel, and both at the age of 18 years old, every boy and girl has to go to the army and are obliged to serve in the army, so that definitely builds a character. So this is in Balarieli, and she is a serial entrepreneur, and she named her book Chutzpah that way. And you know, as women, it's our right but obligation to strengthen our gut muscle, take opportunities, lean in, and execute things. And for me, as a lifelong dancer, I like to call it the prima ballerina muscle. As you know, I feel that this is the thing that paved my way to my inner skills, to my inner confidence, to the way I like to perform and be on stage. And this is something that is really crucial to implement in our DNA. So did you know that according to Harvard Business Review, more than half of the tech leading women were athletes in the college and practiced competitive sports? And that requires grit and performance and inner resilience in order to succeed in this way. So Yael Wiesel, she's a gifted entrepreneur, and she's one of them. She excelled in ballet and jiu-jitsu and swimming. And she was the first Israeli commander in the Air Force, where she guided the telecommunication officer course. Then later, she studied in the Technion electrical engineering. She worked for Elbit Systems, which is one of the biggest Israeli corporations. And then, with much chutzpah and creativity, she took all her technological knowledge and actually founded Zikit, which is a virtual fitting room for online shoppers. So you see how it all combines together. You take your knowledge, you take your chutzpah, and you found a startup. That indicates a lot of passion and grit into it. Sharon Barak, she is the CDO and co-founder of Solotum. And she only wanted to make a new world with new kind of plastic that has all the plastic good things, but without all the bad things that plastic has. So with much chutzpah and creativity, she took her experience and she actually co-founded Solotum, and that way she saves our oceans and nature and planet. And this is, again, another startup from Israel in this area. Mental resilience and grit. So deep in the Israeli mentality, there is the commitment to create our own country for the Jewish people in Israel, and this is the grit. Grit is passion together with endurance. This is actually Angela Duckworth stated this term. And our mental mechanism in DNA is meant to deal with all the uncertainties of life and the way you have to stand up, always stand up, continue forward with all our might, and this is actually the mental resilience. So in my daily job with my startups, this is actually what I do. I take care of their inner mechanism and how they grow and how they find the right investments and how they deal with it. So the picture that you see here on the presentation is actually the picture of my grandparents' house in Israel. They were all Holocaust survivors, and this is where they raised family of 4 children. And that for me represents a lot of mental resilience, the ability to go through it all and build a family in here. A wonderful example for grit and mental resilience is Professor Ada Yonat. Ada Yonat was the first laureate of the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 2009. on her study on the ribosome. She is the first Israeli woman to win the Nobel Prize and the first woman in the Middle East to win this prize as well in science, and the first one in 45 years to win it in chemistry. So in order to lead in science and to win the Nobel Prize, it really takes a lot of grit in research in order to succeed, to go to these places. As I mentioned, in my daily job as a startup coach, I work with my entrepreneurs on how to build their mental resilience so they can succeed. And nowadays, in light of the COVID, it's so clear that the most important thing and resource that we all have to manage today is our mental health. So two of the startups I advise to, and there are many more, but focus on this area exactly, and they bring solutions to coping with mental health. Same pain, same challenge, different technology, different psychology, different methodologies. So you can really scan the barcode and try them. It really works. And I really think that as leaders in your communities and organization and as self-being, it's something that is very, very important nowadays to lead and to implement and to make people feel comfortable with what they're feeling inside, because only that way we can make new businesses and grow. The fourth pillar, supporting ecosystem. So we talked about the why and the chutzpah and the grit and the mental resilience. This is all internal. But now we also need to talk about the external factors. And for that, we need to have a supporting ecosystem that will help us cultivate all the business opportunities and how it actually works. So let me share with you my few most important things about how to create a supporting ecosystem. So Israel has 460 incubators, accelerators, innovation programs, and that actually creates a very powerful hub of mentors and tech leaders and industry leaders and serial entrepreneurs that want to come back and help the society and the community to grow. And also innovation leaders, they really believe in diversity of all kinds. So 3 examples to how with technology we can implement diversity, for example, is Kamatech, led by Moshe Friedman, who really created the first designated accelerator for Orthodox and helping them actually to create new startups. Second example is the coding bootcamp for Bedouins that is aiming to increase the low number of developers from the Bedouin company. And the WeAct, founded by Daria Henning-Shaked in the Silicon Valley, is a beautiful launchpad for Israeli women and tech leaders that want to take their technology to go to market to the Silicon Valley, to the West Coast, and there they actually help them to initiate everything, to get in touch with the right investors, etc., etc. And there are many other examples. So these are just few examples of how diversity is being promoted and being implemented through technology. In Israel, we have 378 representatives of multinational companies. Maybe this number increased a little bit by now. And there are many R&D centers. So actually, those companies are coming to Israel as a center to look for new opportunities, for new investments. Many of them are in early stage. Some of them are also in growth later on. And that creates a much easier environment to begin processes, because it's here, it's in Israel, and those communications enable them to later on go to market in various fields. By the way, many of the leaders of those R&D centers are managed by women. Communities. Israel is a tribal society, and that helps us to create many, many communities. It can be arranged around industry vertical, geographic, or corporations, etc., etc. So in the community, there is much support. It's a growth engine. It's a very strong growth engine to increase the activities and to help startups connect with whomever they need. And also as a byproduct, when you're building an ecosystem, communities creates a lot of additional positions for the people to get around this. So this is another very meaningful part of it. In Israel, we have more than 20 academic institutes, among them the Technion and the IDC and Weizmann Institute, Haifa, Tel Aviv University, many universities. Plus, they have the TTO, which is the Tech Transfer Office, that actually helps to take all the ventures from the academic and later on to transfer and to help it monetize and being commercialized into the private market. So it's like a direct channel that helps the startups to go out from the academy into the real world. Government support really matters. It matters because it actually creates new infrastructures and budgets, and also sometimes it is to update the regulations and what we need to do in order to implement this kind of technology. So the Israeli Innovation Authority, for example, is one of the must-go places for every early-stage startup in Israel. They provide grants and a lot of support, and this is a really meaningful channel for startups to begin their process and the way they need to go. And another beautiful example that I want to share with you is Contech. Contech is actually a joint venture of the Israeli government and the private sector. They're coming from the understanding that the real estate and construction market needs to be disrupted. So they created this joint venture and are aiming to disrupt an industry of more than $13 trillion by increasing safety, decreasing costs, and improving the planning and the execution stages. I advised to this community, to this innovation program for more than 4 years. Some of the really hot names in this industry, Tzach from Insights that is just here, and Bigger, and Swap, and Janda, and Versatile, led by female founder Meirav Oren, who just raised $20 million last week. And they are really booming. The construction tech is really booming with raise of more than 800%, growth of more than 800% over the last 2 years. And from traveling here in Dubai in the last few days, I see all those cranes and buildings and so many opportunities, and I think that this area of startups and technologies can be very, very relevant to what's going on in here, and it's super interesting. So it actually shows that the government support helps, and it's very important to have this dialogue between the industry, between the government, between the academy, between the communities, like to create a complete ecosystem that everyone are fulfilling and everyone are completing each other. Okay, the fifth pillar, investments. Startups needs funding. That's the rule of the game. It just doesn't work otherwise, in direct continuation to the previous talk that was just here on stage. So in Israel, there are 160 VCs, CVCs, and dozens of angel investors that actually provide funding into this industry. But, and it's a very big but, did you know that only 99% of the world's capital is invested in women? And that only 10% of the VCs, GPs, are women? And that only 2% of the world's capital is invested in women. So those numbers are not so good, you know? They show a different picture. By the way, this picture was taken in Israel approximately 2 years ago after Angela Merkel came to Israel, and the press took a picture only of her and many leading men and no women in it. So leading female executives and entrepreneurs took another picture with her in the middle, it's not really her, as a protest about what happened. So yeah, we're activists, we're assertive, and we do what it takes in order to continue and lead. So, how can we change it? If I have something that I want you to remember from here is how can we change it? First of all, we need to invest in women entrepreneurs. The woman in the picture is Savta Jamila from Pkin, a Druze lady for over than 300 years in Israel, north of Israel, and she owns Jamila Secrets, which is a global natural cosmetics company that provides products to all around the world, and she's doing it big time. Second thing we can do, we can invest in fund of funds that later on invest in women entrepreneurs, just like Marie Meeker did in Bond VC. That's also a very powerful channel. We should encourage more women investors. Did you know that in Silicon Valley there are 800 VCs with men investors, but only 150 VCs with women investors. So we should change it. We should enable more women investors in this industry. We should enable a safe and accessible investment arena to ask the same questions and to choose investments by the same criteria, not to discriminate. And we should also increase impact and social investments, just like Cecile Blilios is leading in Pitango VC in Israel. The femtech startups is also a very interesting vertical because it actually acknowledges women for whom they are and provides solutions and technologies to women for who they are. And assessment says that by 2027, this femtech industry will reach $60 billion. $60 billion, so it's really a magnificent number. Okay, so the opportunity nowadays with these new bridges between the UAE and Israel, there are many, many things that can be done. We can we can increase investments, increase entrepreneurship, increase women entrepreneurship, and create a more complete ecosystem that connects between these two locations. Relocations is the opportunity to create opportunities. I'm talking as someone who did it twice. And the Israelis, they really like it because once you're in a certain place, you have the option to really gain knowledge of the culture and of how things work. So it's really interesting to create new opportunities that way. And we all need to embrace a growth state of mind and to be out there and not to be afraid of creating new opportunities and do new magnificent things together. So how can I help? This is the most important question. I help startup companies grow in more than 50%, increasing their sales and funding, and I help entrepreneurs grow in more than 100%, as I help them create their focus that they need and increase their productivity and leadership skills and managing their mental resilience, because this is really the most important thing. Investors, they invest in the team. They invest in the founders, in the startup. Technology can change, they can pivot all the time, but who should stay there is the co-founders team. They should lead this company from an early stage, pre-seed, later on to growth. So maintaining their inner resilience is one of the most important things in order to succeed in this. So this is my story and the story of some Israeli male and female founders and entrepreneurs, and hopefully that with this new dawn of relationships between the two countries, many opportunities will rise, many entrepreneurships, many entrepreneurs, and many women entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
So before we quickly move on, do we have any questions from our audience? Please put your hands up, say you are and where you're from if you do have a question. If not, we can make sure that you catch up in the break, of course, as well. But amazing presentation. That was so interesting. It's very shocking figures there as well. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to Gali Bloch Liran. Thank you.